All right, let's begin. Good evening, everybody. Happy week 6, week 7 of quarantine. My hair is getting atrocious, and I got 2 months to go looking like this. This is going to get creepy. So, welcome, everybody. I have built in this week, number 6, as kind of somewhat of a rest week. We will be completing the capital budget risk analysis tonight in a spreadsheet. But there's no graded work this week. There's some articles to read, which you'll probably use later on in the course. I have posted our capital budgeting case study, which is not due until May 31st. That is now posted. What I would like you all to do this week is to read it. If you want to start on it, go ahead, but please feel free to read it. We will discuss that case every week in the remaining time of our class. Every week we will have a discussion and a review of that electrics case that I posted this week. But this week is kind of a relaxing week. Well, I don't know how much I can say relaxing to you guys. You probably say, yeah, right, Mr. Hassey. But this week is a little bit slower week, a time for reading, catching up. Some of us still have to post our case number 2. You've already talked to me about that. That is fine. And I will be grading that as soon as they're all posted at the end of this week. But there's no new chapters. There's no anything like that as far as that is concerned. There's just some articles, and I'll show you where those are. Maybe some of you have already read them. And then there's the reading of our case that'll probably drive you to drink when you read it anyway. So forget about the relaxation. But that's what we're going to do tonight. Take a little bit easier as far as no new material, just catching up on capital budgeting and that sort of thing. So that's our goal for this evening. I want to start off with taking a look at our Blackboard site. Here it is right here. The Blackboard site, a couple of things to note this week. First of all, in week 6, the week 6 file folder, there's my introduction video of this morning. Again, I was late, I apologize. And here are these 4 articles I would like you to read this week if you've not already done so. Strategy without disrupting your organization, a net present value refresher, measures that drive performance, and the state of small business. Now, this is in 2016. The good thing about that is you only have to read only to page 14. That's more prevalent to what we're going through in small business today. Those 4 articles. Now, the reason why I'm having you read those 4 articles is I want you to take a look at thinking and strategies outside of our textbook and outside of some of the material in our class, to take a look at some other thinking in regards to what we've been talking about. And also, these articles will prove beneficial for you when you begin writing that electrics paper and analysis later on in the term. So they will be a good reference for you later on. I've also posted a video called How the Economic Machine Works by Ray Diallo. I don't know if you know who Ray Diallo is. If any of you are LinkedIn people, follow on the LinkedIn channel. Mr. Diallo does a lot of posting on LinkedIn. Mr. Diallo is worth $1 billion. He is the creator of a hedge fund. Not just because he has $1 billion and he created a hedge fund doesn't mean he knows anything more than the next guy. But this guy does. And I thought this is not for any material for our class, but I thought I would post this just as giving you a little background into how our economy works. It might prove beneficial, not in this class, but down the road in other classes. It's just good material to keep you abreast of how things work. It's a long video. It's 50 minutes. So if you don't want to watch it, you don't have to watch it. But it's just some additional information, additional material that's available to you that you can try. But you do have to pay attention to these 4 articles that I would like you to read for this week. We will discuss those articles next week in our class. I've given you some review problems and the solutions. We did 9:15 last week. I'm going to take a look at 10:7 tonight, just briefly. But again, I think the problem we started last week in the spreadsheet with the $1 million investment is the one we're going to concentrate on tonight. I've updated a new file for you to begin with tonight. If any of you would like to download this week 6 complete capital budget analysis spring 2020 Excel spreadsheet, if any of you would like to download that and follow along with me in class tonight, you're more than willing. If not, I will repost this at the end of class and you have the recording material for tonight to follow along. But this week 6 file that we're going to complete tonight is what you're going to be doing next week in case number 3, which will be posted next week's class, and what you'll be doing in the electrics case due May 31st. It's the complete risk analysis, capital budgeting analysis of a situation of an investment. So, so follow along with me this evening. If not, look at, if you're in your car or if you're in jail or wherever you are, just look and download that post later on and check it out as we finish it this evening in class. That's what we're going to spend most of our time on, is that. Okay. So again, and speaking of the electrics case, if you go to the case study file folder, you will see this case. It comes in the format of a case analysis, which is the PDF, which tells you what to do. And then I give you a rubric, and I strongly urge you to read that rubric because it gives additional parameters and information about the case. This case is due the last day of our class, Sunday, May 31st. It can be posted sooner, but it's due the last day. Our last week of class is Wednesday, May 27th. That's our last class. But this work is due the 31st. You have basically a month to do it, okay? And again, as I said earlier, we will be reviewing certain aspects of each one of the parameters of this case every week beginning next week to help you. This is a case that I did not select. This is a case that's selected by the department chairs of the MBA Experienced Professional program, which you are all members of. And it's selected by the department chairs to best represent finance and what you should be able to do as an MBA student, all right? So this is a case that the university selects, and the reason why they select this is our program gets assessed every year to make sure we stay accredited. And I think that's probably an important thing for you guys to go to an accredited school. And this is one of the ways we stay accredited. We have to provide information, we have to provide case studies that pretty much mirror what an MBA finance student should be able to do to graduate. This is one of those cases. So it's important. So we'll be spending time on it. You'll be spending a lot of time on it. And all I want you to do this week is download those files and read them. That's all I want you to do. And then we'll go from there. So again, as I said earlier at the beginning of class, this is a reading week. Reading articles, reading this case, and then we'll practice this work next week in case number 3, and in subsequent weeks in our class, we'll be doing problems along that line. So that's where we stand. Case number 2, again, the solutions will be posted as soon as all the cases are posted, and then I will post the solutions. Now the solutions will be in a rubric format, but it'll be kind of crude because I'm not going to give the fancy presentation. I'll just give you what I'll be looking for as far as data and research involved. So that'll be posted later on this week. All right, so that's the material we're going to be using tonight. Downloading week 6 complete Excel spreadsheet if you want to follow along, and then read the articles and read the Electrics Incorporated case for this week. Now, if any of you, as you read the electrics case, you'll go, hey, this looks like the Road King case I did in 500D. Hey, this looks like California Best Trucks case that I did in Business 500D. hey, this looks like I've never seen it before. Whatever. But this is a case that asks you to do a capital budget analysis of a company deciding on 2 products, and also to do the risk analysis of the likelihood that this can work. And we're going to talk about that risk analysis tonight in class. If there's any questions, if there's no questions, I'll begin. But does anybody have any questions? All right, looks like the Brady Bunch is all set for another exciting 6:35 class here in University of Laverne. Darlene, Yvonne, you okay? Where's Donald Duck tonight? Not there. Oh, there he is. All right, thank you. All right, there's Darlene, Alice, Angel, Jesse, Michelle made it. You're going to be late, Michelle. You made it. Roman, James in his usual LA County jail look, and we're all set to go. Okay. All righty. Here we go. Let's bring this up. First of all, in this week 6 capital budgeting spreadsheet, there's a tab for question number 10-7 in the textbook. It's pretty simple. I just want to do one more time going through without all the fancy lines and all the fancy variable costs, fixed costs, and all those other variables. Just again to briefly show you what we mean by return analysis. This is a problem where they give you 2 projects, Project A and Project B. And each project has an investment of $15 million. Each project has net cash flows, but Project A has 5 million, 10 million, and 20 million in that order over 3 years. Project B has the direct opposite a little bit, 20 million, 10 million, and 6 million in year 3. Our job in this problem is to determine the net present value or the return of these 2 different projects and the internal rate of return of these 2 different projects to determine what is the better project. All right, what is the better project? Well, it doesn't go out, and this is what they talk about in one of our articles we're reading this week, a refresher in NPV analysis. One of the key things in returning on an asset is getting the greatest amount of cash flow the quickest. You want to pick an investment that gives you the money the fastest. All right. You'd rather get that, invest in that type of asset than an asset like in Project A that still pays you $35 million, but it pays us that $20 million late, where in Project B, it pays us the $20 million earlier. Thus, we're going to return our money better, quicker. We're going to return a higher return in percentage and a higher net present value. And that was the context of this question. And the reason why I'm showing you this is this interpretation of getting the money faster, getting the cash flow faster is important in when you're analyzing the return or the decision or the strategy on a project. You want to pick an asset that not only gives you a recoup of all your costs and makes you a profit, at the same time, it gets you the money quicker. Because then you can take that money you're making quicker and do other things and satisfy the needs of the investors or the capital structure that provided that capital as the initial investment. So that's an important part of strategy, and that's one of the things is one of the primary issues right now going on in our economy. Many companies are not investing in new capital. They're waiting to see what's going to happen to the changing markets. Our GDP last quarter was announced today with roughly close to a 5% reduction in our GDP. That hasn't happened since the Great Recession of 2008 and 2009. That doesn't happen very often. So what does that mean? It means our economy has shrunk. It means there's no new investment in capital. People are being laid off. We're not providing enough. There's not enough capital return in the investment world. The market sees this, and the stock market is sold off. People have sold off. Why would I invest in a company now where they're not growing? They're not hiring people. They're not producing cash flow. I'm going to cool it. Well, now the big discussion in the economy is, and today, if anybody saw it, I highly doubt you did, but I found it quite interesting, is the Federal Reserve Chairman Powell had a conference call with people around the world, and he talked about what was needed to get this economy going. The bottom line of that discussion was capital for investment. Get the return of the money back into the system, back into so we can hire people, back into so we can get the capital faster, and thus give that return back into the economy. And then the stock market will start going up, and then people will start being hired, and that sort of thing. And that's what the Federal Reserve is trying to do by stimulating that by low interest rates and providing a lot of cash in the market. So this is a big strategy going on now. And to know the premise behind this strategy, this is a very simple problem that can show that. So let's look at Project A. The $15 million investment with a $5, $10, and $20 million cash flow. Remember that cash flow is exactly like we did last week. In this case here, the cash flow is this number here. How you get that cash flow is you determine the sales and the cost and the depreciation and the tax and the salvage value and all that sort of thing. And we'll look at this a little bit later, but that's what makes up these numbers here. But the key part of this is what type of return does this represent when our cost of money is 5%, 10%, or 15%. And this is what I was talking about Chairman Powell today in the Federal Reserve. The cheaper the money, the greater the return. The cheaper the money, the greater the return. The cheaper the money and the greater the cash flow, like Project B, the greater the return. The IRR for Project B is 82%. I wish. The IRR for Project A is 44%. Still pretty good. But the key instrument of this is, and what you should know, is cash flow received early, positive, and cheaper capital. What the Federal Reserve now and what Donald Trump is trying to do, what's Donald Trump doing to do? Oh, God, come on, companies, hire people, go back to work. Even though it's dangerous, let's go back to work and make some money, all right? He wants the economy to get going, to hire people, to produce products, to get that stimulus going. On the other side of the coin is Federal Reserve Chairman Powell. He says, well, I'm not too concerned about who works and when they work or with the safety about working. I'm providing the necessary cash, the necessary capital to get this started. And that's by keeping interest rates low. That's what the Federal Reserve is trying to do. The combination of Trump forcing everybody to, and the governors forcing everybody to get back to work, even though it's not safe, and the combination of cheap money will stimulate the economy, thus make investors start reinvesting back into the stock market, reinvesting in bonds, reinvesting in products, and the economy will start up again. But we're in a big hole. What's the hole? 25 million people and growing are unemployed. It's going to take a while to get those people back to work and earn some money. And secondly, a lot of people aren't very confident in our system. I don't know about you, but if Devorah Lieberman came up to me tonight and gave a phone call and said, Rick, you're going to be teaching at Burbank next week, not online, but you're going to be seeing Alice and Ramon and Yvonne next week in class in Burbank. I would say, Devorah, I don't know anything about what Yvonne and Ramon and Alice want to say about this, but I don't think that's a good idea this early to go back and put me in front of a classroom. Who have I touched? What have I done? Alice doesn't know that. Would that be very safe to put our students in that type of environment? Well, we got to get back to work. We got to get things going. We got to make sure the students are happy. Well, that's my job of doing online. But if you want to be like the governor of Florida and make everybody go back to work, go right ahead. But the risk is on your shoulders if somebody gets sick. So that's where we are right now in the environment of our world. And this drives the return. And that's one of the strategies that you have to look at next week in case number 3, and look at next week or down the road in the electrics case. What strategy provides the quickest return in cash and the cheapest capital? That's the strategy you as a decision maker need to look out for. And if you can't get those strategies, what do you have to do to get that to work? What do you have to do? What strategies do you have to do? One of the first strategies, if I was running a company today, is first of all, make a safe environment for my workers. If I can't do that, then no other strategy is going to work. The second strategy is, okay, now I have to convince my customers that my product, my service is good enough and safe, so come back in and start buying. And that's part of the strategies going on today, to generate lack of fear, and at the same time, get the cash and the capital going in the system. So as I calculated these numbers in Project A, notice the discounted cash flow number. I took the net present value of the cost of 5%, and I discounted the cash flow of $5, $10, and $20 million, and that calculation was $31.1 million. I took the difference between the discounted cash flow and the investment to get my net return. The same thing with cost of capital here of 10%. Higher cost of money, lower return. Then let's do it for cost of capital for 15%, and I'll do that for you. Formula, function, net present value function is what we use. The rate is 15%, and the cash flow is the values from year 1 to year 3. And now the logarithm is going to take that 15%, discount those 3 years, and gives me $25,059,000. That's the discounted cash flow. Notice how much it's lower than the others. Because why? Money is more expensive. So I take the difference between that 25 million and my investment, and I get $10 million. So again, that substantiates why the Federal Reserve and why managers of businesses why financial managers of businesses these days are making these decisions, because they want cheap money. The cheaper the money, the greater the return on their capital. And that's how they sell it to investors. That's how they sell it to the Small Business Administration. That's how they sell it to the bondholders. If I can find cheap money, I'll give you a greater return on your investment. Same thing holds true, and even a little bit more so in Project B, where again, my cash is now a lot higher in the early years. Notice my NPV, and let's do it for 15%. Function, net present value, 15%, and the values of Project B through year 1 through year 2. I get $28 million. And the NPV is the difference between that $28 million and my investment, $13 million. Yes, I'm making less money because the cost of capital is more expensive, 15, 10, and 5. But notice, compared to Project A, when I'm generating more cash flow in the years 1 and 2, thus my project is producing a greater return at all the different levels of capital. So the reason why I selected this problem is I wanted to show you again how the nature of cash flow, more early is better, and the cheaper the money is better. And that's what business is trying to do today, from mom and pop hardware stores to General Motors. Tesla today came out with their earnings for the first quarter. They made a profit. You know, for years I've been bashing Tesla, never making any money. never making any profits. Elon Musk has the ego the size of the moon. But all of a sudden, in the last 3 quarters, what has happened? Tesla has started to make money. Why are they making money now? Efficiency. They now have their production efficiency down where they're generating profits because they're doing things, making their products more efficient. That's the bottom line. A lot of you guys study in MBA, supply chain management, organizational structure, risk allocation in marketing and manufacturing. It's taken 10 years, but now Tesla is doing that and they're making a profit. And on the other side of the coin, it's going the other way for companies like Ford Motor Company. They lost $1 billion this last quarter. Why did they lose $1 billion? Because they have a lot of overhead. They have a lot of top management salaries. They have a lot of old plants. They're not very efficient. And I'm sorry to say this, and I might offend some people, but this is the MBA training in me. They have a lot of expensive union contracts. Tesla doesn't have any. Thus, that overhead is a killer. That's why Tesla made $1 billion and Ford lost $1 billion. So what are you going to do? Well, Ford's got to find a way of working with the unions to do better, to generate more of that cash flow, cutting those costs. Tesla's got to keep doing the same thing, knowing that Ford and General Motors and Toyota and Hyundai are right behind them, going to be building those electric cars and trying to become more efficient. He's probably in. I know Yvonne's industry is very competitive at multiple levels of communication, cable, entertainment, movies, whatever. That these are the theories and the strategies that you have to apply to make this work. Capital budgeting is a way of determining that return and giving you the basic strategies of saying, I want to find the cheapest money and I want to find the cash flow the quickest. If I can run my business that way, I'm going to attract investors. I'm going to be successful. But how do you generate higher cash returns? You be like Tesla. You don't have unions. You have cheaper efficiency models. You have more robots than you do people. But it takes time for old style companies like Ford and General Electric and General Motors to change. But they will, because they have to that or they can't compete. And these are the areas of study that we're looking at, the strategies that drive these decisions to create greater cash flow, to create cheaper money. How do you get cheaper money? You manage your debt. You manage your credit rating. How do you if you want to buy a house next year and your FICO score is 650, all right, you can get a house next year. You might have to pay 4 or 5% in interest, depending on what happens to the markets over the next year. But if you have a FICO score of 750, you're only going to pay 3.5%. Your money will be cheaper and you can get a better house or more a house. How do I get to that better FICO score? I pay off credit cards. Maybe I try to earn more money or I save more money. I manage my finances cleaner. Thus, my FICO score goes up and I get cheaper money. That's what corporations do all the time, and that's why they hire MBA graduates to determine those strategies and determine those key indicators that tell them where they need to be successful and efficient. And that's what we're doing here. So let's go back to that case we did last week. And here it is right here, where we had a $1 million investment and it produced a nice net present value of $450,000. It produced a nice, somewhat nice, not too great, internal rate of return of a little bit over 17%. It produced a profitability index of 1.4 times greater than the cost. It pays to pay back in a little bit under 5 years. Those are the returns of this budget. Well, now tonight, we're going to concentrate on the risk associated with these numbers. Excuse me. Nostrovia. We're going to concentrate on the risk associated with these numbers. Are these numbers that we put together for this project, are they legitimate? Are they within common sense? I guess that's a bad choice of words, but it's true. Do they make sense? And the risk analysis we're going to be doing here is associated with two things. One is called a scenario analysis of taking a look at profitability and return at different sales outputs. That's it. All the numbers stay the same, but volume is changing. And then the other risk analysis, which we'll do after 7 o'clock, is the scenario analysis. Excuse me, the sensitivity analysis. The sensitivity analysis is taking a look at individual variables of this particular project that we think are the most important pieces of this and the ones that we are concerned about. What we sell our unit at, the selling price, what is our variable cost per unit, and our cost of capital. And we're going to put that in a sensitivity analysis by each individual unit at a particular deviation in change, plus or minus 5, 10, or 15%. In other words, we're going to change those variables at different levels, and how does that affect profitability? This is called risk analysis. You are going to have to put this together in case number 3 next week. You're going to have to put this together in the electrics case due May 31st. This should be your template. This should be your analysis. What I suggest you do after I do this tonight is you try to do it on your own. See if you can come up with the same numbers that I did on a different spreadsheet. That would be very good practice for you. So let's begin this. We've already determined this is our base case we did last week. 25,000 units sold every year. Cost of capital, remember we did the WACC last week of 8.83%. Tax rate of 30%. Roman, are you raising your hand or are you nervous?
A little bit of both.
Hey, what do you got, a question?
No, I'm just...
Okay. That's okay. I thought you were raising your hand. And a working capital of 12%. I'd be nervous if I was studying this in an automobile. I wouldn't know what the hell's going on. A working capital of 12%. So this is what our base case was. If all these parameters hit right on the money, we're going to do pretty good. We're going to make almost $500,000. We're going to pay it back in 5 years. We're going to have a nice return on our investment, almost double what our cost of capital was. Not bad. But what if the economy changes and we go to weaker sales? What if the economy does better and we do sell even more sales? That's the scenario analysis. So if you go to a tab here, I already have a tab set up called risk analysis. Click on that tab, and I have some basic templates set up to do this. All right. I have the scenario of average sales, which is the base case, 25,000 units, strong sales of 35,000 units, and weak sales of 12,500 units. Yes. And then here's an interesting thing, and the textbook tries to explain this to us and doesn't do a very good job. It's the percentage or probability that we will hit these sales levels. There's a 50% probability we'll hit our planned 25,000 units. But there's a 25% probability that we'll have a stronger economy and be able to sell 35,000 units. And there's a 25% probability that we're going to run into a slowdown and only sell 12,500 units. Who calculates these probabilities? They're called internal accountants. They're called cost accountants. They're called CPA firm consultants. Many companies are large enough and they have internal auditors and internal cost accounts that they can come up with these probabilities doing standard deviation statistical analysis, and we won't get into that. Or you can hire somebody to do this for you. But these, based on the history of your company, based on how your company has reacted in strong economic conditions, weak economic conditions, average or base economic conditions, what are the probabilities of those affecting your business? So there's a lot of calculations and analysis here, but fortunately in our class, it's all given to you. So first of all, if I go back to my base case and I know that I had a $450,832 NPV. If I take that here and put it into my scenario table, 450, 832, it'll automatically take 50% of that as the likelihood or weighted probability of that occurring. If I have a 50% shot at making 450,000, I take 50% of that. There's my deviation or my risk assessment on that probability in NPV. I go back to my base case now, and now all I have to do is put in 35,000 units here for the best case scenario. And my template that I've already set up and made great sacrifices to put this all together nice and neatly, if I type in 35,000, and you can do the same, 35,000 units here, watch what happens. Boom. I get $1,041,626 of NPV. All my variables have changed in relationship to that output of 35,000 units. So now I put this into my scenario table in my risk analysis, 1,041,626, 1,041,626, and it automatically takes 25% of that as a weighted average of that 35,000 scenario of strong sales. Then I go back to the base case, and now I want to put in 12,500 units, which is my weak case or my bad economy case. Put that into my template. Ooh, I lose $287,659. I lose money at 12,500 units of sales. I put that into my risk analysis, minus 287, 269, and that weighs that by the 25% probability. So what have I done here? I've taken the scenarios of different strategies or different relations to the output of my business. I've determined the probability or the likelihood through statistical analysis, the chances of those happening. And then I've weighted those probabilities to the actual NPV those scenarios will develop, and I get a weighted average of $414,005. Now, what does that tell me? It tells me, yes, I don't want to get to the economy of selling 12,500 units because I'm going to lose money. But it also tells me the weight of the probability of that happening is taking that risk and still making it that I'm going to do pretty well. The probabilities of all these happening weighted to the type of scenarios of developing those profits is still going to give me a weighted average far above profitability. So based on the weighted scenarios, I'm still going to make money by that averages, by those probabilities. That's the scenario analysis. It's talked about on pages 471 and 474 of your text. There's a video in our YouTube website and in our Blackboard that explains this as well. But this is what scenario analysis is. Now, here's the good thing about this as a manager. This is our base case. So let's put this back to our base case. This is what we think is going to happen. 450, 832. That's what all our analysis, the inputs we get from production, marketing, sales, HR, whatever. That's what everybody on our team thinks we're going to do. But it also sends up a warning sign. If during the course of these 10 years of this project, we start seeing our yearly sales start dropping, not from 25, when the actual numbers start coming in, and we see maybe in year 3, 4, or 5, we're no longer selling 25,000 units, we're beginning to sell 20, 18, 15, the market is changing. We know if we get down to 12,500 units, we're going to start losing money. We probably start losing money around 14,000 units. That gives us a warning shot that if all our costs are still within line, all our costs are what we estimated, including the inflation. But if our output starts dropping, we got to watch what we're doing. We got to start making decisions about how do we get back those losses of sales. And guess what, everybody? Every company in the world now today are looking at their numbers with basically their scenarios of disaster taking place. Not too many companies predict that they're going to have 0 sales in the month of April. Many companies had 0 sales in the month of April. Not too many companies. You see in this scenario, am I forecasting 0 sales? I don't think so. But companies know when they start seeing their outputs dramatically drop, they better do something quickly. Well, what did they do quickly in the month of April? They laid off people. They laid them off, right? They stopped spending. But what happens in May, June, July, the next quarter, that this revenue doesn't come back? What do they do now? Why is it not coming back? Consumer confidence? Maybe after a couple months of not buying your product, some consumers say, you know, I don't need these guys anymore. I'm going to go someplace else. This is what's racking the brain of a lot of managers today in American business, is what is going to happen in May, June, July. Very important. So this is part of the strategy behind this thinking, the strategy behind scenario analysis. It gives you a heads up that if things start turning on a volume level, on an output or sales level, you better be careful. But if everything goes according to plan, we're cool. But you guys know this. Is your economic life the same as it was 10 years ago? No. Is your economic the same as it was 3 months ago? See how things change. And by doing these scenario analysis, companies can begin to see the future. And as the actual numbers of the future come into being, where do they stand to their original estimates? Are they doing things right, or are they doing things wrong? Or does the economy have everything to do with it and they're not doing anything wrong? One of the biggest frustrations I have a lot of my friends who are in business these days is we didn't do anything wrong. We've been doing everything right. We've been efficient. We've been using technology. We've hired the right people. We're paying the proper money to them. We didn't do anything wrong. So why are my bankers getting mad at me? Well, the bottom line is you now have to manage and you have to adjust to these circumstances that have nothing to do with your management of the company. It can be very frustrating, very frustrating. You know, I had a student come up to me today in one of my undergraduate classes, and he was a little bit down in the dumps because his father and mother both got laid off on the same day this week. Both of them were laid off. They happen to work for the same company. And the reason the company gave them is exactly what I'm talking to you now. You guys did everything right. You're great workers. We just are not selling anything. Our market has changed. So we have to keep the business going so we can hire you back maybe in June or July. We want a company to be here so you can come back. This next 3 months for many American companies are going to determine whether they survive or not. And that's why we have the CARES Act. The 2.4 trillion dollars are going to SBA loans, capital for larger companies. They're providing that safety net for the economy to turn in the next few months to get them the capital to keep going. And that's what's going on right now. All right, so that's the scenario analysis. Taking different levels of volume and determining by the weight or the probability of those events occur, how will that affect the bottom line? Any questions? That's pretty easy. Not too difficult. I think the most difficult thing to get a grasp on this scenario is, Mr. Hassey, where do these percentages come from? Well, they come from other sources. Your public accounting firm, your risk managers, your internal or cost accountants. They calculate these deviations, these statistics. If this was a statistics class, we would be doing this, and I'd really put you guys to sleep. Fortunately, we don't have to worry about that. In our class, those percentages are given to us.
What are they based on, the percentages?
They're based on the probability. If you take a look, let's say a company has 20 years of financial records through 20 years of different economic conditions. Throw those numbers into a statistical analysis and you can come up with those probabilities. Have you ever taken statistics?
I have.
When you take statistics, you can do a probability analysis, you can do a standard deviation variance analysis, you can put in your return on investments, your profitability, compare that to some type of indicator of what type of economy you're in at that present time, growth, stagnant, slowdown, recession, whatever. You put those parameters into a table, into an analysis, you can come up with the likelihood over 20 years, 10 years, 30 years through economic conditions and your performance in those economic conditions. What's the probability that those, your scenarios or what you predict, what you don't predict are going to happen? Like, it can be very easily done. Easily if you like statistics. And public accounting firms have the statisticians to crunch these numbers. And large corporations have risk managers, not only insurance risk managers, but risk managers about their history, their return, and internal or cost accountants that crunch these numbers every quarter and make them available to the CFOs to do these types of analysis. Not too exciting, but needed if you want to do these different. Remember, probabilities are a pretty strong tool in financial management. If you have a strong statistical information, strong statistical analysis over many years, they really do work. They are exactly right on the button. And that's an important concept to know in management. Numbers do not lie. And a statistical analysis going back many years can give you these probabilities.
And Professor?
Yes.
What is that number, the 414005? What is that telling us?
That's adding up 50% of NPV, 25% of NPV, 25% NPT. It's called the weighted NPV return. It's the sum of these three numbers. Average, happy days are here again, Darth Vader. Different types of scenarios. And the average of that over those three different types of probabilities. I know when I talk to marketing and salespeople who's not known, this is not a knock, but whose brains and thinking are different. And you start throwing statistical averages and statistical probabilities and beta theory at them, they freak out. Because it's all based on the past, a past review of comparing yourself to the market, to the industry, to the economy. A lot of sales and marketing people can't relate to that. Some can because they use those numbers in advertising. But these are very important numbers to use for finance analysis because they give you a pattern of your company and the likelihood that this could happen. The likelihood that we're right with output is 50%. And we've proven that over the last 20 years. And that's how that works. Any other questions about the scenario? Yvonne, did I answer your question? Sorry. Okay. All right. So when we come back from break, we're going to look at sensitivity analysis, pages 468 to 470. We're going to change 3 variables, and you only change 1 variable at a time. You don't change all 3 at once. You change 1 at a time. How does a change in selling price affect bottom line? How does a change in variable cost affect bottom line? How does a change in the cost of money affect the bottom line? And then we'll see sensitivity. What's the sensitivity? It's common sense that the change in selling price is going to have to give you the greatest variation. But also it helps you to know that if you start seeing changes in selling price in your actual numbers, if your selling force says you want to sell 25,000 units in year 3, we're going to have to drop the selling price to $18 a unit. Why? Because our consumers are not going to want to pay $20 in year 3. They're going to want to pay $18. How does that affect our profitability? Those variances, those changes in variables. And I've set up a chart which is going to graph this out to take a look at that when we come back from break. So it'll take about 10 minutes. I'll see you about 7:05, 7:10-ish in a few minutes. Smoke them if you got them. Have a glass of Jack Daniels, Coca-Cola, wine, preferably water. And I'll see you back in 10 minutes or so. Thanks, everybody. Okay, we're back. Sure, my microphone's on. Here we go. Okay, I had a question on the break from James, and it's a good question. Is he's struggling to figure out how this helps me in doing any analysis. And what it tells you is if you read in the text, it also defines that as well, and I'll say the same thing. If you do a probability, a weighted probability of the likelihood of certain levels of sales and output, and the probability that they're going to happen, and then you weight those probabilities over the profits that you're going to generate at those different levels of output, you get what is called a weighted average. If the weighted average still is within the parameters that you determined as a significant profit of NPV, for example, let's say if I change the probabilities of this to 25%, and this would be a 50% likelihood. Notice how the number dramatically changes as far as profitability. If I say, oh, well, usually our estimates are not that clear. We have a track record of being inconsistent with our analysis, and there's a greater possibility that we're going to have a downturn and make less units or sell less units. Notice as how that dramatically changes the profitability. At this occurrence and the 50% chance is happening, I think the managers or the decision makers of this company will say, you know, that probability and those chances of losing money are too great. Maybe we should think about something else. Or maybe we should try some other alternatives, or maybe we should pull the plug on this a lot sooner. If all of a sudden we start seeing a dramatic change in the output, we get out. It sets the stage for other strategies down the road because of those probability indicators of a loss is a lot greater. So if I go back to the original levels, it just gives a weighted average of the likelihood. 50, 25, 25 is 100%. If you weight those over the different possibilities of profit, this is still, geez, we're making 450,000 at a 50% probability. We're still making 414 if we build in the probability of a loss. That's still pretty reasonably amount of return. And yes, once we see that our sales start dropping into those teens, then we know we better do something fast or pull the plug. So James, I think that's what that tells you. It sets the stage for other strategies down the line. And I think one of the key thing here, and this is what, this is what I've been preaching, will be preaching in these next 5 weeks or 4 weeks, is now you have to learn how to, all right, what do these numbers tell you? Not only what they tell you today, but as a manager, what does this tell you about future? As you start seeing the actual numbers coming in year 3, 5, 8, 9, and those numbers are changing rapidly, you now know that you're going to have a losing situation. The probabilities are changing. The economy is changing. Geez, I didn't do anything wrong, but the economy is changing, so I'm not selling anything. You know in advance when that's going to happen by doing this type of analysis. That's the good thing about that. Okay. Let's take a look at the sensitivity.
Sir,
yes,
real quick, is
Yvonne.
this scenario analysis, is it for a given period of time, or are we looking over a period of time?
We're looking over a period of time. These probabilities are based on a period of time, like going back 10 years, 20 years. But then we're taking this and assuming that if these are the probabilities over the last 20 years, we assume those probabilities are going to stay going forward the next 10 years. We assume that. If our statistics and our numbers are that strong and valid, and also I didn't want to add another layer to this, but if you guys are getting a PhD in finance or whatever, you would add a plus or minus deviation to these percentages. We're going to say 25%, but plus or minus 5%. We're going to have a 50% probability plus or minus 7%. Then you add another layer to that, but we're not getting into that here. That'll drive you to drink. Drove me to drink when I studied it. So you don't want to do that. But we're just concerned about the likelihood that these events could occur. And thank you, James. That was a good question. So let's take a look now at sensitivity. Sensitivity is where we designate 3 variables, 5 variables, 1 variable, whatever, and what is going to happen to the profitability, NPV, if we change these certain variables plus or minus 5, 10, and 15%. How is that going to affect probability? So let's start out with the sales price per unit, all right? And I'm going to create this chart here that gives the NPV at a 15% reduction in selling price, a 15% reduction in variable cost, a 15% reduction in WAC. And here are our initial figures through our original base plan. And then a 15% increase in selling price. What if our company's like Apple? And we can say, you know, we can get away with increasing our selling price and these people are still going to buy our product because they like us so much. Hey, if we can increase our selling price, let's do it. Or what happens if we sign a new labor contract and our variable costs go up? And what happens if our risk changes and our WAC changes? So we look at different scenarios, different sensitivities to these key variables, and we put the NPV in this chart. And as I put the NPV in this chart, you'll see a nice little chart beginning over here. So here we go. First of all, let's just put in with a 0 change, that's going to be our base case number, 450, 832. If we don't change anything, we'll still get that kind of money. So let's put in 450, 832 right here. Okay, don't mind this. This will fill out as we move along. So again, if we don't change selling price per unit, if we don't change variable cost per unit, if we don't change WAC, we still make the 450, 832. And you guys can put your numbers in your spreadsheet. Is that what you're doing, Yvonne? And is it working that way? Okay, so that's what we're going to do here. All right. Remember, always, after every time you put something in, save your file. Save your file. That's important. Okay, so now let's go back to our base case and let's go to selling price per unit. Remember, we have all this tied into these numbers already. So if I go to $20 a unit, and remember our first number is a decrease of 15% in our selling price. So if I go back to the base case and under the $20 cell, I type in equals 20 times 0.85 equals 20 times 0.85. Why 0.85? That's a 15% reduction from 100%. I hit equal, and notice my NPV goes to 82,628. So now I put 82,628 in my chart, and off we're running. Notice I didn't change variable cost. I didn't change WAC. I'm just changing each variable separately. The sensitivity of each variable. So now let's go back to our base case and now change that $20 to times 90%, 0.9. A 10% deduction, 0.9. We get 205,363. Makes sense. We're now reducing the amount of deduction to the selling price. We're going to make more. 205,363. And we put that here, 205,363. And there we go. Our line is getting excited. Oh, I better let that go. That's getting a little bit too crazy there. Okay. All right. 205,363. Now we go back to the base case. And now we'll take that times 0.95, a 5% deduction in sales. 0.95 times $20, we get 328,098. 328,098. Look at that. All right, so we begin to put in our numbers for a specific. Now, this is where this is good, because we're beginning to say, well, let's say in the future, in order for us to sell 25,000 units, we got to cut our selling price by 15%. Ooh, we're still going to make a profit if everything else stays the same, but we're not going to be making much money. This gives us a heads up if we have to change our strategies for the management of this project, this return over time. All right, now let's go back to our base case, and now let's make $20 times 1.05, a 5% increase in our selling price, 1.05. See how important it is to set up the spreadsheet correctly the first time? This is a no-brainer. 573,567 is our new NPV with a 5% increase only. That's the only variable change in selling price. 573,567. We'll put that here. Notice our chart is beginning to form. Ooh. A 10% increase in sales back to the base case. Now I'm going to stop right here. You can develop, and I didn't do this here, but you can develop macro charts, macro templates that all you have to do is put in the original base case, and then you have that chart say, what if sales changes 5? What if this? You can do a what if template, and this chart, instead of us manually creating it, you can do this automatically in a macro template. Now, I'm not going to get into that type of analysis here, but that can be done where you do a macro where this automatically, poof, ends up that way. But I'm not doing it here because I don't want to drive you guys to leave my class. So let's go back to the base case. A 10% increase in selling price would be a 1.10 increase, 10. Over the $20, we get 696,302. It's growing. 696,302. See, Yvonne already did all this. She thinks she's cool. 696,302. And there's our line. And then finally, a 15% increase in our selling price, 1.15. $23, we now get 819,037. And there we have it. The line is straight. Golly Gomer. And that's a good thing. If you end up putting this together and the line has little bumps or it's not straight, you did something wrong. If you have a blip in this or it's not a straight line, why? Because it's consistent. It's in 15, 10, 5, 5, 10, 15. It should be straight if you do this carefully. And that's, we now know we did it correctly. And what it does, it tells us with a 15% increase in sales, we're at the top of here in the chart, 819,037. At down here, a 15% reduction in sales, we're still making money, but it's at 82,628. The reason why this line is this steep is because there's a $736,409 variance from top to bottom. The greater this number, the steeper the slope of the line. Boy, there we go, back to Economics 101. The greater the variance, the steeper the line. All right, we'll see that with these other variables in just a minute. Anybody have a question on how I did all this? Okay, good. Now save it, Yvonne. Save it, Alice. Save it, Michelle. There we go. Now we go back to our base case, and one of the first things you got to do is go back to the normal level. Forget the selling price change and put it back to $20. Get back to the 450, 832. Now we're ready to do the next risk analysis, changing variable cost, decrease, increase of variable costs. So now we're going to create that. So I'm going to stop talking for the next 10 minutes, and I'm going to put this together. You can follow along with me, or you can do it yourself and see if you match me. So here we go. $8 is now going to change over this sensitivity variable. And stop me if if you're getting confused or something's not working. Okay, I did that kind of quick. But you should see now, notice how the line, because this is a cost, it goes the other way, number one. And number two, notice the steepness of the line. Thank God it's straight, but the slope of the line is a lot flatter than the selling price line. And you can see that here in the variance. From top to bottom, there's only a change or a delta of 293,000, a lot different than the 736,409 of the sales variance from top to bottom, which kind of makes sense. Our selling price is a lot greater than the variable cost. So any changes to that are going to be a lot greater in the selling price. But it tells you relatively what is the sensitivity of selling price, the steeper the slope, and the sensitivity of the variable cost, the flatter the line. Okay? And notice right where they meet is 450, 832, the actual base case NPV with no changes. There it is right there. Everybody got that? If you did do it? Now we're going to do something a little bit different, but before we do that, let's put our variable costs back to normal. Okay, we're back to there. All right. Now, our next variable is WACC. Remember back last week, we calculated the WACC as being 8.83%. We did that for the problem. In case number 3 next week, you're going to have to calculate the WACC. In the electrics case, you're going to have to calculate the WACC. In case number 2, you had to calculate the WACC. So now you guys are really whacked out, but that's okay. So now you know what that means, what it represents. So now we have to determine what if WACC changes, how does that determine our profitability? Well, if we look at our base case, WACC, where is WACC? Well, there it is right there, but where is it in our calculation? It's right here in the discounted cash flow. That's where the WACC is. There's no other place on this that I see WACC. That sounds stupid, doesn't it? But whatever. There's no other place here where WACC is a variable. It's all right here in determining the discounted cash flow. So now what we have to do is we have to change our sensitivity variations by this 8.83% and then insert it in this formula to change the discounted cash flow by the WACC. Notice in the formula here, discounted cash flow is the NPV of 8.83% from year 1 through year 10. So now we have to change that 8.83%. So let's go to our variables here, just like we did with selling price and variable cost, and go to 8.8 equals 8.83%. And now we're going to be multiply again still by 0.85, a 15% reduction in WACC. And what do we get? 7.51. And now we go down to the discounted cash flow and insert 7.51 into that formula. And that changes the NPV to 550, 566. Because we've changed the WACC by reducing it by 15%, the cost has gone down, we're making more profit by a 15% reduction. So the 550, 566 goes right here. 550, 566. That's a 15% reduction in the WACC. So let's go back to the base case again. Now we have to change 8.83 times 0.9. A 10% reduction in WACC. What do we get? 7.95. So now we go back to the discounted cash flow formula and put in 7.95 as our discounted rate. We get 516, 248. Selling price, all the cost, every variable stays the same except our cost of money. 516, 248. Put that there. Now we go to a 5% deduction in the cost of capital, 0.95. 8.39. Put 8.39 into my DCF calculation. 8.39. We get 483,017. 483,017. How do I know I'm doing this right? The line is dirt straight. No beeps, no blimps, no, it's dead straight. I know I'm kicking butt in doing this analysis. Now we go back to and increase it by 5%, our WACC. So times 1.05. We get 9.27%, a 5% increase. So our credit has gotten lousier. The cost of money has gotten more expensive. So now we put in 9.27 into our analysis. Discounted cash flow, 9.27. We get 419,653. See, money's more expensive. We're making less money. All else staying the same. 419,653. 10% increase in our WACC times 1.10. Oops. We get 9.71. Put that into our equation, 9.71. We get 389,439. People do this for a living. 389,439. Everything is getting straight. One more number, a 15% increase in our WACC percentage. 1.15. We get 389,439. 380, oops, that's not right, hang on. 10.15, excuse me. 10.15, I forgot to do that. 10.15 is a 15% increase in our WACC. We get 360,156. 360,156. And look at that. Notice the WACC line is even flatter than the variable cost because, as you can see, top to bottom variance is only 190,410, a flatter line. Don't forget to save this. Thank you, Yvonne. Go back to the original and wipe out that. Go back to where we were at the very beginning. And you should get 450, 8.83. And now we're back to where we were. And now we do the analysis. Now we write the paper. Now we interpret the results. Just like we did with scenario, what does this tell us? Well, pretty obvious. It means that the selling price per unit is our most sensitive variable. If we have to adjust the sensitivity or the price of the selling price of our product, that has the greatest fluctuation in profit. It also tells us that if variable costs do change, that can change profitability. But even with a 15% increase in the variable cost, this is in addition to inflation, remember, right? This is in addition to inflation. We're still making pretty good money. And it also tells us we're pretty well risk-free as far as changes in our cost of money. If we have a 15% increase in our cost, our credit, our risk, we still are making pretty good money. If the market changes, if our risk changes, that sensitivity is not that much. We're still making a pretty good profit. And this is where this is important. Just like we did in the scenario analysis, this is giving us a picture into the future. If we have to increase our selling price to keep 25,000 units sold every year, what does that do? I mean, if we have to reduce our selling price, what does that do to our profitability? But if we're in a great market and we can get away with charging more, let's do it. If we can still sell 25,000 units and charge 15% more, let's grab that and make more money. The same thing holds true if our costs change, our vendors change, our union contracts change, whatever. And if our cost of money changes over time. How does that influence profitability? So we're taking a look at this risk analysis at two different perspectives. The perspective of volume here and the perspective of variables here. Both gives us a view of the future and see how this will change as our actual numbers come in. Let me give you a real world example of this. When I had my business, you know what my most sensitive variable was? Fringe benefits. If my fringe benefits changed, that directly associated more loss of profit than anything else in my company. Why? Here's why. I was a small little mom and pop business. You know, I was a small business. I had the most employees I ever had were 19 employees. Kind of dopey, isn't it? But I had 19 employees. But I could only pay my employees a certain amount of money. I could not compete with the big investment firms. I couldn't compete with the banks. So in my business model, I said, how am I going to keep loyalty in my company? How am I going to, so I don't have to keep training? As some of you know, what's the most pain in the neck thing of a business? Always hiring and training people. Good God Almighty, I can't stand that. So my business model when I started my company is, how can I fix that? Well, I can't compete with salary, but I can compete with fringe benefits. I can tell every employee who works for me, I'm going to pay for all your health insurance. I can tell every employee that works for me, I'm going to put in 15% into their retirement 401k. If they want to put in more, go ahead, but I'll put in 15%. So I'm going to pay for all the health insurance. I'm going to pay for all I'm going to put in 15% into the retirement. And at the same time, if they want to go and get an advanced degree, I'll help them and pay for that. Because of that, I only lost 2 employees over 30 years to another company. Now some employees left because they either retired or they had to move out of town. But I only lost 2 employees because they gave them better benefits and they wanted to make more money. But because of that business model, I never had to train anybody. I had people work for me for years and years, and I could trust them, and that I let them do their thing. I didn't have to worry about it. That was an important business model decision in me. That was one of the few things I did right in managing my company, is that I kept my people on staff and I never had to change employees. And I developed a good, efficient customer relations type of business because you always knew who you were dealing with. And because of that, I knew if I got a call from my insurance broker, and my insurance broker was Aon, if anyone ever heard of that organization, Aon. And Aon used to call me every April. Hey, Rick, we're ready to give you a new, we're ready to price out your health insurance. And they go, okay. And it was always 15, 20% increases every year. So I knew based on my sensitivity model, if I hit that up with a 20% increase, I have to develop a strategy of where am I going to recoup those costs. And I always recoup them in telling my clients, my customers, that you're going to get better service from me than you are at Wells Fargo because you're dealing with the same person all the time. And so I'm going to raise the cost that you have to pay. And I very rarely lost clients because of it. I lost some, but because of that, that increase in revenue made up for me keeping that fringe benefits the way I wanted and kept my business solid. So you can adapt this strategy to any type of business model or plan that you're doing, but by knowing this information, it helps you strategize. I got a chat question. That's right, Michelle. Health insurance was a big cost of mine, but my employees, they thought I was weirdo, and they thought I was a kind of a goofball, and they thought I was sometimes a lousy manager like anybody else in a boss. But they were very loyal because once you worked for me for 6 months, you never had to pay health insurance, ever, never. And boy, did they like that. They liked that a lot, especially if they had families. Now, that was an added burden to me in my business, but I developed that in my business model. I incorporated that in my revenue streams. It worked for 30 years. Yes, I lost 1 or 2 employees. Losing 1 or 2 employees over 30 years just because of that reason, not too many companies can say that. So that was my business model. Yes, I didn't make great amount of money. I made good money, but not much. But I kept a good loyal base. And that paid off to me in the long run because those employees ended up buying the business from me. And there you go. Another chat question. Oops, I lost it. Three chat questions. Okay, good guys, thanks. But that's a perfect example of that. If any of you are going to start a business and want to be an entrepreneur and you start hiring people, I didn't hire my first employee until I was 5 years into business. It was me and me alone. But after 5 years, I began to make enough cash flow where I started hiring people. And one of the first things I thought about is I can't afford training costs. I can't afford turnover every friggin' year. You hire an MBA from USC, you pay them back then $60,000. In 6 months, they're saying, can I get a $10,000 raise? Because if I don't get that $10,000 raise, I'm going to go work for Wells Fargo at $75,000. I can't compete with that. So again, how did I get them to stay and be loyal? Hey, if you want to go get your another degree, or if you want to study more, I'll help you pay for that. And I'm going to pay for all your health insurance. You are? That saved them a lot of money. And so that's how you manage it. So in an entrepreneurship, or even in your own business, in your company, you want to develop strategies that give, even though in the long run, a lot of my business friends said, Rick, you're nuts. You're paying for all the health insurance. But I said, look at my budget line for training. Zippo. I didn't spend any training. So these are the strategies you have to think of. And this is the data and the information that provides those strategies. Save the file.
What kind of investments did you specialize in, Dr. Hasse?
First of all, I'm not a doctor, Roman, but good question, or James. Thank God I'm not a doctor. I'm not that geeky. But but what I see, my business was, and have I told this you guys this? I don't like to talk too much about it because it's boring. But what I did is, remember, I think I might have told you when I got out of college, I was a CPA, and I hated it. So got a job, went to JP Morgan in New York and became part of the investment analysis, financial analysis group. But when I decided to split off and go out on my own, because I had a group of about 10 core clients that wanted to go with me, that were JP Morgan. And I had to pay JP Morgan for those clients, by the way. But I took them with me, and 7 of them were here in Southern California, Orange County and Pasadena. So I said, okay, we're moving to California, off we go. And I started my company with those 10 core clients. And what did they do? Why did they want me? Because they were growing their business and they wanted somebody to help them find money, find capital. And I was the person that did that for them at the cheapest possible cost. I helped them find loans. I helped them find Shark Tank money. I helped them find, as they got bigger, I helped them do IPOs. And I got a percentage of that. But at the same time, I didn't keep my CPA, but I hired a couple of CPAs to do tax consulting for them, to do tax work for them, to help them once they raise the capital, how to manage that. So I had a pretty good business model there. I raise the money, they get the money, they put it into their business, and then they need tax help. So that's how I created my business model. The first person I hired was a CPA. Second person I hired was an investment manager. So that's what I did. I helped them find capital. But here's, as I got bigger in my year 12, I believe, then I went to investors and saying, how would you like me to manage your money in a portfolio? And at the same time, if I see that you are a good fit for a company looking for capital, I'll match you up with them. If you don't like the deal, we won't give that company your capital. I'll keep managing it. So I did a lot of 401k management for some small businesses. I invested their money for them. I managed that portfolio. I didn't get that big because that was too risky. If I screwed up, I didn't want that liability. But I managed portfolios up to $20 million, $30 million. That's as high as I got, which is, trust me, is very small. But that's what I did. So my business was raising capital, managing capital, and then also finding capital investments for other investors. So that's what I did. That's what I did. And also I explained this to a lot of companies, how to do this themselves, how to keep track of these analysis themselves. So we did a lot of consulting, developing macros and templates and spreadsheets and technology so they could manage their business better by using this type of information. So we had a nice little niche. Once a company got over $75, $100 million in sales, we were too small for them. They needed, I always told them, you guys got to go to somebody else now. We can't handle that type of risk or management. So we kept the very small businesses, but we developed a good core over the course of the years, and we were able to be fairly competitive. So that's what we did. I hope that answered that question.
Are you going to give us some financial advice later on in this?
The only financial advice I will give you is after you're no longer my student. All right. If you're no longer, if I see Yvonne at a local pub one night and I buy her a beer and she says, Mr. Hasse, by then she'll call me Rick. She says, Rick, my husband and I are starting to think about getting into real estate. What do you think? Then I'll give you my advice and my opinion. But until then, nada. You guys aren't going to school to get financial advice. You're going to school to learn how to think like managers. Now, once you're out of school, you'll probably be able to think this stuff out anyways. You won't need me anyways. But I'll be able to offer you some opinion when we're done. And I will never, and I'm not doing this as a sales point, but I never ask for money to do that. It's just, we're colleagues. Once you guys graduate your MBAs, you and I are on the same level. We're colleagues. I have nothing more than an MBA degree. I'm not a doctor. I'm an MBA. So we're colleagues. So we will share ideas once you graduate. That's my philosophy behind that. Okay, we'll talk more about that later. All right, so there it is. There's our capital budget risk analysis. It's now in this file. I'm going to post this file when we're done tonight, but you're going to be doing the exact same thing next week in case number 3. I'm going to give you a company with some variety of variables. You're going to stick them into a capital budget analysis, and then you're going to do a scenario and sensitivity analysis based on the variables that I give you. And you're going to do the same thing. And then when you're all done, you're not going to write a paper. You're just going to be in like one sentence or one paragraph. Tell me, is this project profitable? And is it safe, in your opinion? One paragraph. In the electrics case, you're writing 5 to 10 pages about that. But in case number 3, you're just doing a spreadsheet and a paragraph. Remember, case number 3 is spreadsheet work. Case number 4 is video work. And I had a conversation with Yvonne last Friday, not trying to embarrass you, Yvonne, but we talked about case 4 and doing a video. And I thought about, and Yvonne told me some kind of cool things that she could do. But then I thought over the weekend, Yvonne, that I don't know, that might be a little bit too much for our group. I don't want to put you guys in that type of situation where you have to produce and put together a video. So I'm going to think a little bit more about that and maybe come up with another idea in separate from a video, something else. I'll think about that a little bit more over the next week or so. And I might ask for some of your opinions. I might send you an email saying, what do you think about this? I don't know if I want to put you guys and subject you guys to doing a video when, some of us, this is the first time we're doing a lot of this stuff, and I don't want to put that kind of pressure on you. I want you to know how to interpret and strategize, not worry about whether you can put together a video. So we'll see about that, and we'll talk more about that. And Yvonne and a couple of you, I might ask for your opinions on that down the road. So that's where we stand on that. So, but we will practice this next week. But for the remaining part of this week, what I would do is maybe try to do this on your own again, if you want to. And also you have to read those articles and download and read the case. You'll see in the case where you're going to have to do this kind of stuff. Now I'm going to be upfront with you. In the case, you have to do a scenario analysis. You have to do a sensitivity analysis. That's part of the spreadsheet work. But then you have to interpret it. And we're going to be looking at examples of that throughout the next 3 weeks, just like we did here. What does it mean? James asked a great question. All right, Mr. Hasse, I saw you crunch the numbers. What the hell does this mean? All right, we're going to talk about that more and more every week. So that's what you have to do this week is kind of just read, take a deep breath. Don't have to worry about a grade. Yes, you have the next 3 weeks after that where you have a lot of work for grades. But this week is a kind of a little rest week after the good work that you did last week. And learning about this risk analysis. Remember, it started out last week with these simple steps, and then the calculation of the WACC, and then the base case, and then the different risk analysis scenario based on output and sensitivity based on variables. Boy, you put those are exactly the steps you're doing in case 3, and in the electrics case, you're doing the same thing, but also you're writing about it and interpreting it. And we'll talk more about that as we go along. But if you can read that material this week, and those articles will help you in your electrics case. So read those articles, and you'll be in good shape, and we'll move forward. I'm going to let you go tonight. Some of you still have some work to do on case number 2. If you guys can post that, I'm going to have my office hours on Friday. If any of you have any questions about this risk analysis or anything else, and I'll see you on Friday. Let me open it up to everybody to make sure we're okay.
Question.
Yvonne.
Do you think you'll have case study number 2 graded before your office hours?
Hopefully I will, yes. It's, you know, and I don't, again, I don't want to put pressure on the other students who are still working on it because they have situations where they needed some extra time. But if everybody posts by Thursday, I'll make sure by Friday morning all the grades are up. And if you really want me to, I will post your grade. I just won't post the solutions yet until everybody posts. So count on that by Friday. Okay, fair enough?
Mr. Ashley?
Yes,
This is
James.
Is there any way that we could have case 3 sooner? Just so you get just to look at it, or is there a reason why we need to kind of wait, or?
No, I can post case 3 this weekend if you want me to.
Just timing of stuff that I would mind getting.
All right, I'm making a note to myself. Where's my class notes? I will post case 3 Sunday afternoon. How's that sound? So you'll have a week and a half to do it.
That helps. Thanks.
Okay, no problem. Here. Now some people, no, you guys won't freak out. It's okay. You guys will be fine. Angel might get all upset, but she's tough. She can handle it. All right. Alice, you all right? I see that you were sipping on wine during the class tonight. What's going on there?
No, I'm drinking water.
Oh, okay. All right. I thought that was wine. That's all right. There's no problem with that.
I could talk to you offline. I was just thinking on this kind of case scenario, what happened in our entertainment world, like if a box office.
Oh, yeah.
Let's say, like, for example, Joker, week 1, they will be up by 10%, week 2 or week 3. Would that be then I would have, I guess, box office sales and then ad and prints. I wouldn't have whack, but I could look at, take that case to go
definitely.
by percentage, right?
Definitely you could. Okay. Yeah, you probably wouldn't look at whack. That's probably beyond your control. That's more at the corporate upper level, that type of deal. But if whatever your revenue streams or what you have control of, you can do a scenario. That'd be something to do. Yes.
Okay.
Matter of fact, if this was a doctoral class, if this was a PhD or doctorate in finance or organizational management or something, there are cases that we put you in situations where things real world situations, and we buy these cases from real world companies, and we apply that thinking just like you just said. What happens if our weekly analysis of box office or car production per unit on a weekly basis or something like that? That's exactly what doctoral study is all about. Yes. I got a chat. Hang on here. Oh, Thomas has said goodbye. Okay. Darlene, again, quiet as usual. Darlene, are you okay? All right, you're fine. I can read lips. All right, so it's warm. It's humid here in Claremont tonight. Very humid. I don't know if it's humid where you are, but here in Claremont, very humid. So I'm going to be signing. I'm so goofy. Signing off now. I've been on this stupid computer for 12 hours today, so I get a little punchy at the end of the day. So I hope everybody stays well. If I'll see some of you maybe Friday afternoon, look for your grades from case 2 to be posted. Do that reading. That will help you. And I'll see you guys all next week. Adios. Be well.
Thank you.
Okay, guys.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Roman, get out of that car. You look goofy.